Awesome. Awesome. So now we're live. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. G, and welcome to The Truth with Dr. G. And this is a special edition with some special leaders in our community talking about the urgency of COVID-19 uptake among Blacks, Indigenous, and people of color. It is no news that COVID-19 has changed the way we live life. It has also disproportionately affected more Blacks, Indigenous, and people of color. As of today, over 396,000 people have died, have lost their lives prematurely, and over 23 million people have been infected with this unforeseen enemy, COVID-19. I am so honored to be with three amazing leaders in our community here in the state of Delaware who are doing some phenomenal things and working in the front lines with dealing with community citizens of our communities, some who have been infected, some who are really spreading the word out there, and the importance of us considering taking the vaccine, because there's so many conspiracy theories and we don't know what we don't know. So our goal today is to educate, to engage, to educate, and encourage you to go out and take this vaccine because the benefits outweigh the risk. Without further ado, I am going to allow our guests, Dr. Amar Kobe, Mrs. Tabe Marseille, and Dr. Najala Nukuna, to individually introduce themselves. They have resumes and bios that are as long as who knows. So I'm going to let them tell you what is vital or what they want to tell you about their bios. So we're going to start with you, Mrs. Tabe Marseille.
Thank you, Eunice, for having me. My name is Tabe Marseille. I'm a nurse practitioner, certified occupational nurse specialist as well. I've been in the occupational health field for over 13 years. And I'm looking forward to an engaging conversation around COVID-19, especially as we're dealing with the workforce in healthcare.
I told you they're all very humble. You know, I am going to add, because I don't want to miss saying this. She is also the one and only nurse, and it makes me so proud to be a nurse. We are the most loved and appreciated profession, but you can see how humble she is. What she is not telling you is that she is the nurse from Cameroon, an immigrant from the cornfields of Cameroon, who actually vaccinated the most important person in the world right now, President-elect Joe Biden. I had to add that on there, and let us give her another round of applause. This lady is all over social media, in all media outlets, and I could not be prouder to know her personally and to call her my sister, but she is none other than a nurse, Tabe Marseille. Thank you so much, my dear. And we're going to go over to Dr. Najala Nukuna.
So great so great to be among this wonderful panel. And Eunice, thank you for adding me to this group of wonderful philanthropists and scientists and medical practitioners. And so who am I? I think I can actually call myself qualified to be on this panel because I have touched various aspects of the scientific field. So I am Najala Nukuna. I currently work as a technical manager at DuPont. So it's a chemical company. And I'm in the electronics and imaging business. So as a scientist in my prior world, I was actually a phase 1, phase 2 analytical chemist leader at AstraZeneca, one of the vaccine producers. Theirs is not out yet, but potentially it should be out very shortly. And I also did a postdoctoral fellowship at the Cleveland Clinic in cell biology as an analytical chemist in the cell biology department, and a PhD in chemistry from Case Western Reserve University. So my background is really in analytical chemistry, and I think at this stage, I feel qualified to say I can talk about the vaccines confidently, and I'm really happy to be on this panel.
Excellent, excellent. a scientist on board, and she wears many hats. Don't let her fool you by being so humble. She wears many hats. She's a well-published author in peer-reviewed journals, and one of her articles, we'll be talking about that today, a very well-written and articulate article that I was actually happy she shared that article with me. So we're going to be talking about that. She has the ins and outs of the vaccine itself. So she will be using her expertise to share with us why we should really take this vaccine. And last but not the least, my dear brother, Dr. Amar Kobe.
Oh, Dr. G, I'm very happy to be among these ladies. I am humbled to be there, and I appreciate the work they're doing, and the fact that I must mention this, the fact that this week we are going to have the first Black lady to be the vice president, and she was led there by ladies ladies who work very hard to make sure this happens. So when I see you, I am happy because you are leading the world, and I'm happy to be amongst you. My name is Dr. David Amar Kobe. I run W500G. My mission is to encourage Black, Indigenous, and people of color to participate in social and clinical research so that their perspective can be reflected in the decisions and baselines we make. Because it so happens that because of his historical reasons, we shy away from participating in surveys, in census, in research. And then when we do that, the results don't reflect us. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem, because then the policies and the equipment and the science does not help us. And that's what is leading to what we're going to talk about today, people being unable to trust that the vaccine that we are talking about is able to help them. So that is, I think, I talk too much, and I must. There's a time in front of me.
You're really a social scientist, Dr. Makobe. Thank you all so much for those humble introductions. Yes. And as you can see, our audience, we're live on Facebook and YouTube. So we will, I'll bring you any questions if there's any on those media. So the first question goes to Mrs. Tabe Marseille. Tabe, as a nurse, this must be the highlight of your career with all the attention you're getting. You recently had an interview with Nurse Alice on nurse.org, and you stated that it was an honor for you to vaccinate President-elect Joe Biden. What I saw was a calm, cool, and collected nurse with that needle as you injected the president. Just share with us for a moment the thoughts that were going through your mind at that moment, being that nurse. And if we think back when nursing was just viewed as the handmaid of the doctor, but nurses are at the forefront, they're doctors, they're scientists, they're doing work that goes far beyond the bedside using evidence-based. Just share with us your perspective at that hour and that moment, what was going through your mind at the time.
Thank you, Eunice. What was going through my mind at the time? Not any different if I were vaccinating or inoculating you, Dr. G. So when a vaccine recipient comes, to me, I make sure that I explain to them what they're about to receive. It is the proper thing to do. For all other vaccines, we would use the VIS vaccine information sheet. For this particular one, we're using the recipient, the emergency use authorization, the fact sheets for recipients and caregivers. And I was just trying to explain to him exactly what I was going to do so that no surprises, and to prepare him for the vaccine. So in my mind, he was the most important person in front of me, and I was going to give that vaccine and also offer the opportunity for him to ask me any questions, because you have to offer the opportunity for any recipient of vaccine to ask a question before you finally inoculate them. And so in my mind, I was focused on him, nothing else. And I said, "Are you ready?" And he said he was. And so I gave him his vaccine, and I guess the rest is history.
He looked very calm as well. So you must have done an excellent job alleviating that fear or that anxiety of the unknown. Obviously, he had made up his mind, but having you being so calm probably gave him more comfort in really knowing that he made the right decision and also leading by example.
Exactly. I think, for me at that, after the fact, I thought I reflected on that after the fact, at the moment, because I'm doing what I do and to make sure he gets the vaccine. But after the fact, I realized that this is very important, that the confidence that he had in our organization, being one of the largest healthcare organizations in Delaware, and for my organization as well, to have the trust and confidence that the Director of Employee Health is the one to administer this vaccine, and they know nothing would go wrong at that time if it's the director giving the vaccines. And so for me, that was a double honor, not just for the president-elect to come to Christiana-Care, but for Christiana-Care to also choose me as that nurse practitioner, that nurse to give the vaccine, and not to nurses, because we are the ones at the front line. We're the ones who start, the largest group of healthcare workers anyhow. So that was that the vaccine, to build confidence in the vaccine, that if you can take it, then I guess everyone else can take it.
Absolutely. And I think what I took away from that also is the inclusion part, because some people might think that because he is the president-elect, or if he was already the president, that you would treat them differently. I just want to remind our viewers that nurses really do not look at who you are, your race, your ethnic background, your whatever demographic that brings you that difference. In the moment, all you see is that patient, and you're there to care for the patient. It does not matter whether the patient is Black, whether the patient is a prisoner, whoever, you're there to provide care at the moment, and you're being inclusive. It doesn't matter. Maybe later you might reflect on it. However, it is that inclusivity. And at the moment, all you care about is bringing comfort to that patient at their time of most need, because they need you at the moment, and you cannot bring in the negative energy, nor your thoughts, your racial thoughts or racial differences. It does not matter. So I just wanted to make that point. We're going to pivot to Dr. Nukuna about the vaccine. Since Tabe just talked about the process, there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there. You as a scientist, and you're already helping to work with some of the vaccine production. And, I read your article, Time's Up, Get Vaccinated and Dismantling the Micro Misconceptions of COVID-19 Vaccine. Just for a moment, answer this question. Is there a microchip in the vaccine? And would it be used to decode my DNA? This is what is out there.
Oh, no, not at all. There isn't. And it's very clear that when you say something 3, 4, 5 times, it becomes the truth, especially with our general population. And that's really what has been happening. There is no microchip. So let me just step back a little bit on how this mRNA, and doctor, please chime in. We read papers and we are not actually doing the clinical work, but first of all, it's not DNA. The 2 major vaccines that have been approved as emergency vaccines to be used to inoculate people to prevent COVID-19 infection are the Pfizer vaccine as well as the Moderna vaccine. Both of them are mRNA vaccines. mRNA, so messenger ribonucleic acidic acid. It's not the DNA. Okay, so the mRNA is actually used as a conduit to go into our systems, and it's being sent encased in a lipid vessel. A lipid is just a fatty acid. You can think of an oily droplet vessel for help in actually transferring it into our cells. And think about this lipid vessel. This lipid vessel goes in and it merges with our own lipid vessels in our cells. It reacts with the ribosomes, and that's what triggers the formation of the spike protein. It's just the spike protein, which is the protein that is found on the molecular cell of the COVID virus itself. Now, it's not actually creating the whole COVID virus. It's creating just the spike protein, because this spike protein is very peculiar. And immediately our immune cells see this spike protein. It thinks of it as, oh, that's a foreign protein that comes in. And it immediately gears up to start generating antibodies. That's exactly how it works. Now, in the news, they talk about luciferase. Luciferase was used. Well, luciferase is actually a vessel, and it's a biological vessel that is used in mRNA injection into animals. So in the generation of this COVID-19 virus, as they were developing the virus, they worked on actually infusing mRNA into the veins and the blood vessels of animals. And they used this luciferase dye, okay, which is a firefly dye. So it's something to serve as a sensor to see that the RNA is actually induced into animals. This was not, and I'm going to say this for a fact, it was never used to inoculate humans. So it is not present in the COVID-19 vaccine, but it did help the scientists as they were trying to develop this vaccine in animal studies. So no, absolutely confidently no. There is no chip that's being used. There is no, it's not a DNA vaccine, it's an mRNA vaccine used to transfer and to generate the COVID spike protein. So it's not actually generating the COVID-19 virus into you. No, it's just the spike protein which encases the virus. So the system actually sees it, think of it as a fake protein in the COVID-19 virus. And it immediately starts creating antibodies. And that's what we have. So there's no gene encoding. You're not going to have a different DNA encoded in your cells. No.
Okay, so that basically means the mRNA does not actually get into the cell. Is that correct?
The mRNA gets into the cell through this lipid case, right? It's a fatty acid case. So it actually merges in the cell. It reacts with the ribosomes in our cells, and that's how it generates the protein.
The protein that goes for antibodies. Awesome. See, I told you all, we got it. You're hearing it from the horse's mouth, not my mouth. Let me follow that question, Dr. Nukuna, because I see some people, our Emmy Bride watching from Cameroon. In terms of Africa, we are not dying of COVID-19 in West Africa. Why fix it when nothing is broken? What would be your advice to our brothers and sisters and mothers and parents back in West Africa?
So I left Cameroon, 20-something years ago. I'm sure most of us on this call have been away from Africa for a while. I cannot specifically speak confidently about what is happening in West Africa. What I can speak of confidently is what is happening here. But I will err on the side of caution on the fact that we are immune to COVID-19 in Africa. That's what I'm confident saying. The studies are still out there. The jury is still out there on why we are immune to it. It could possibly be, and that would be fantastic news. Or why the rates are not as high. Well, maybe we are not testing enough. Maybe we are not, doing all of the statistical studies. Maybe the death rate, the death rate in Africa was already high. And here, this is just getting into that system. Maybe we cannot say for a fact what is really going on. But I know for a fact that a lot of statistical studies are being done right now to understand why it isn't a disaster, because everybody was thinking it was going to be a disaster. Until that is done, I would err on the side of caution and take the vaccination.
Absolutely. I think I like your approach with that because we really can tell. And also, statistically, from West Africa, you're not sure how much data is being captured. So that's another factor as well. But it's better safe than sorry, as they often say. So your benefit of taking the vaccine outweighs your risk of actually being infected with the vaccine. It's just like any other vaccine. And what I've been telling people is yes, it was done as an emergency quickly and much faster than other vaccines have been in the past. However, we're living through a pandemic and we needed something, but we cannot solely just rely on the vaccine. Yes, we have to take it because it decreases your risk of really getting sick if you do get infected. But on the other hand, we have to do the masking, the social distancing, and the whole 9 yards, and hand washing and everything else. So let me pivot to Dr. Amar Kobe, our behavioral specialist. Dr. Amar Kobe,
Yes,
from a
yes.
mental health perspective or behavioral perspective, what would be your take or position on how the citizens of around the whole world should really approach what should their mindset be about this vaccine?
Thank you very much. I think first of all we have to realize that this is a human problem, and I'd like to start by saying race per se is not a genetic thing; it is an environmental thing. We define race, okay, and we define race, and then after we define race, we provide conditions that create what we have defined. So the Black, Indigenous, and people of color have comorbidities, economic insecurity, living conditions, and overrepresentation in work or jobs that expose them to COVID-19. They are not exposed. They don't get COVID-19 because they are Black. They get COVID-19 because their conditions are such that they are exposed to it. Mm-hmm. That having ruled that one out like that, so that we know that, okay, even if you are Black and you are doing a job that gives you ability to stay away, you are one or two people removed from somebody who is already exposed. And socially, we are community people. We are not isolated. Most people, most Black people, most Indigenous people, most people of color are community. They work together. They live together. They are closer together. So even if I can work from my office remote, but my cousin works at the front line, and I in as much as I'd like to keep away from him as much as possible, one time I'll get in touch with him. So I will be exposed. So first of all, we have to put that one out there. It's not genetic, it's environmental. Second, I would like to talk about this myth out there that people in Africa are immune from COVID-19. It may seem as if nobody is dying as much as people are dying in the US or in Europe. But we must remember the population age group that is completely affected by this in Europe and the US is not the younger group, is not the younger one. In Africa, the general population is younger. Already, the over 65 are not, we don't have a lot of over 65s in Africa. They are already, I use a wrong word, they are already carved out because of insecurities, because of the living condition, because of the economics. So if that group, because of the economics, because of the living condition, were already not there, of course, if we go by population and age, we'll find that they are already not there. You understand? So we should be very careful to think that because that is not happening there, that there is this they are immune to it. Secondly, I'd like to say that besides having a disease pandemic, we have an information pandemic. And people are using knowledge, psychology, to damage the already damaged population, in the sense that there is a hook. For every lie, there is always some truth. So the first thing they use is faith. People of color, indigenous people, and black people are believe in their God. Faith. So everyone will go to church, everyone will trust their pastor. And then there is the inherent historical mistrust of the health, government, and research establishment, which is true. They had reason to mistrust it. But now, if you use those two hooks, health, faith, and mistrust for the establishment, and then you are the authority figure they trust. Okay? So you see a pastor spreading something which is not true, but they are trusted. You understand? You see, lies and deceit originating from a trusted source. And then the truth and fact coming from somebody, from me and from you, who people think we have been put there to say that this is safe. You understand? So we have a problem, and then lies. Fact, science shows that untruths travel 6 times faster than the truth and fact. So as we sit here, we should know, we should calculate and see how we can be able to develop trust and make sure that the people, authority figures, do not abuse their position by repeating things that they may not know. You see, like the mRNA, how the vaccine was developed. It was scientifically developed because right now everybody's sitting at their home and we are talking to each other and we are talking to people in Cameroon and they understand that. I don't understand why they don't understand that the technology that was used to communicate 20 years ago is not the one we're using today. And therefore, the technology that is used to develop vaccine cannot be the one we had 20 years ago. So the fact that it was developed in 1 year should not matter if we can sit here in Middletown separately and talk. So, okay, yeah, okay. I think I should stop.
Dr. Amar Kobe. Great analogy, though. I mean, I totally agree with the issues of health, faith, and mistrust in research because, you know, history has it ingrained in us that we have had some bad experiences as people, Black and brown people. So it takes a lot of time to decode what has been instilled in the minds and, you know, the lives of people who have been disadvantagedly, you know, positioned in this society. And the system itself is structured to where we're positioned in segregated areas, leading to accommodity factors. And, you know, it's a whole slew of things. But I get your point about leaders being the ones misleading at times. So I think we really need to start by engaging these community leaders in conversations like this. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but they're conversations that we need to have. And instead of finger pointing, just say, hey, this is how we can help our communities. And maybe we will keep moving that needle one step at a time. It is not going to be done overnight. We're not going to change the system overnight. But as long as we're working toward that change and involving everyone in the community with those leaders that people in our communities listen to, I think we can move that needle. But it is very sad that people that we trust and believe and will listen to sometimes are the ones bringing the misconceptions and conspiracy theories. So I think it's work that we really have to keep working at it. And thank you so much for that elaborate response. I'm going to go back to Mrs. Tabe. You kind of talked about the process of the vaccine a little bit, but just share with our audience, you know, the education that goes into it, the consent, and also the follow-up after they've actually taken the vaccine. Are they just, you know, observe for a few minutes and then they go home and be on their own, or what resources are out there available for them in case they have adverse reactions?
So thank you, Dr. G. As I said earlier when I was discussing how we give the vaccines, so not only do we talk about the common side effects, common things will happen commonly. And so with all vaccines, we kind of know some of the things that would happen from the myalgia to the fever. COVID vaccine will not give you COVID. So as Dr. Najala explains the science behind it. So when we give the vaccine, some of the education that we give as well is from the CDC, and it's called VSafe. And so I'm just going to show you that. It has, let's see, it has a code where you would use your iPhone and take a code, and that is your daily check. It'll come on and it'll ask you questions every day just to report what you're feeling. This is a mass vaccination endeavor. And I'll tell you, as of Friday, 6.6 million vaccines have already been administered. And so if you're thinking that this vaccine is not safe, we would have already heard a lot of bad things, right? Out of 6.6 million as of Friday. So, the V-Safe is something that we give everybody, and that's how we monitor. That the CDC actually, that's how it monitors for side effects. This is a group effort. So all primary care providers, all of your advanced practice nurses, and your registered nurses that work towards this effort to be available to answer questions. As I said, common things happen commonly. So the common side effects that you would get for vaccines is nothing to panic about. It's common. There are other things that we want people to watch out for, which we do not expect. We don't expect your fever to go very high. We don't expect loss of taste. We don't expect some things that are really COVID symptoms, because that means you had already been exposed to COVID before you got your vaccine. And so we want to keep an eye out for that. And we advise people to please call your PCP, please call your advanced practice nurse if you feel something other than what has been indicated. I talked to you about the fact sheets for recipients and caregivers for emergency use authorization. Everybody who gets the vaccine has to get one of this. And it goes through, it's like 6 pages, goes through it. For my organization, we created a quick summary, real quick summary, to help people understand, because 6 pages sometimes is too long for some people. So we broke it down, and then we talk about things we don't expect. We don't expect a cough. We don't expect shortness of breath, runny nose, salt, loss of taste. That's not what we expect. The vaccine should not give you that. So with that, and you take your three your 3 separate things, and you go home with it and you keep it. I have mine, and you keep it, and that's how you stay in touch with the CDC, and you report all of your symptoms if you have any. So that's what I'm saying, that when you get the vaccine, any vaccine you get, even if you were getting the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, you will have your VIS, your vaccine information sheet. Mm-hmm. It tells you there too, expect a fever, you might get a fever, you might get pain at the vaccine site, which is normal. You get the Tdap vaccine, you'll get pain at the vaccine site. So it's not abnormal. What I caution people is it doesn't mean that because you got a vaccine, anything that happens in your life after the vaccine is due to the vaccine. We have to be realistic. Everything that happens in your life after you get a vaccine is not because of the vaccine. But you certainly want to speak to. So we don't miss things. If you have appendicitis, it's appendicitis. Don't sit down and miss something because you're talking about the vaccine. So you're getting a heart attack, it's a heart attack. If the vaccine will not give you a heart attack, let's take care of that. So I caution people out there, as I said, common things happen commonly. You would get your normal vaccine reactions that you would get from the flu vaccine, any other vaccine. I'll tell you that the pneumonia vaccine, nobody has ever refused it. When you get to a certain age and you're offered the pneumonia vaccine, you get it because you know that it's good for you. For children, we give them their vaccines. You take your child to the pediatrician and you accept the vaccine. So this is another vaccine, but let's not discount that it is part of a 4-leg stool. You must continue your hand washing, your masking. It is very important. Those things are so important, and the safe distancing. Distancing also means, that do not find yourself in a closed room, in a tight room with multiple people without wearing masks. Mm-hmm. That is being irresponsible. You know, the vaccine is here just as an adjunct, just that final thing, just to ensure that we have herd immunity and that we protect ourselves. The devastation of this COVID, and the doctor said it beautifully, that young people might not have the comorbidities that would cause devastation to them, but when they give it to their parents and their grandparents, now that is devastation.
Yeah.
We cannot minimize that. That although they might not be severely ill, some of them do get ill, but when we give it to our parents and grandparents, that is where the problem starts.
That's right.
And for people who've seen cold trucks packed behind their hospitals because their morgues are full, this is not a joke. And so people live longer in the West, and so they tend to catch this, and it affects them. But this is COVID should not be the reason to bury. So let's just take that, put that in our minds and keep each other safe.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Thank you for that. You could not have said it any better. Really, it's not about the young people. It is about those you're going to infect, especially your aunts, your uncles, your parents, that will suffer the dire consequences of this infection. Yes, you're young. You may have, you're so young, you're running around. You may not even experience some of the symptoms. However, your mom, your dad might be the ones to suffer from it. So let us really just exercise that caution and follow the instructions, the social distancing, the masking. And there is no reason why you should be in jangy houses at this time. There is no reason why you should be in beer parlors. Your life is valuable. There will come a time where we will move back to near normal, maybe. But for now, let us just be on the side of caution so that we are not continuing to spread. Look at the new strain. We don't even know. Looking healthy doesn't mean you don't have COVID. Some people have COVID and they will not have symptoms. And they're walking around and they're visiting you in your home or visiting you at a party. I see people already planning Valentine's Day parties. Ladies and gentlemen, please stop it. Please do not do it. You're putting lives at risk. And we're not going to put a stop to this enemy if we do not do the right things. So, Tabe, I know you have to run early. So let me just ask you another question, in case you have to drop off, and then we would be good. Now, there are still healthcare professionals out there, though, who are adamant that they will not take this vaccine, despite the fact that for almost a year on a daily basis, they have gone out and worked so hard. They're determined, they're still passionate about what they do, but they're also putting their lives at risk and the lives of their family members. And we have lost so many healthcare professionals to this disease. What message do you have for healthcare professionals who are still hesitant about taking this vaccine? Yes, we understand taking the vaccine doesn't mean you will not have COVID, but it helps. Just like the flu vaccine, just like the pneumonia that you mentioned. What message do you have for healthcare professionals who are still hesitant? And in addition to that, can you just give us a sense of when can you take the vaccine after you have already tested positive? There's such conflicting information from the layman.
Sorry, I was on mute. Dr. G, the guidance for taking the vaccine after you've been sick with COVID is fluid, right? There is really no strong guidance, but the vaccine is not ready for the entire population. So not that we're stratifying, not that we're trying to give some people and not give others. But the thing is that when you have had COVID, you have some kind of immunity for at least 10 weeks to 12 weeks. So with that said, and if you've had COVID, you know the devastation of it. So the thought was to have people who've had COVID step behind the line to allow other healthcare workers who've not had COVID to step in front of the line and receive the vaccine. This first wave of vaccines that have been made available to receive it first, because it's a 2-dose vaccine. And 3 weeks apart for Pfizer and 4 weeks apart for Moderna. I know there's more vaccine coming, but that was the thinking. But there is really no contraindication to getting the vaccine if it's available to you. And you don't know when the second wave of vaccines might come around. The only indication we ask is do not show up in line when you're actively ill with COVID, not just from an infection prevention standpoint. There's really no reason for you to go in line to go get the vaccine when you're actively ill. So we ask you to wait until you're well. And if you would consider just stepping behind the line to allow others to get the vaccine, that would also be great, but it's not mandatory. You can get the vaccine anytime after you get well of the COVID, and that's the guidance. Your second question for healthcare workers who are hesitant to get the vaccine, all I'll say is you are in a hospital setting and you have access to information. It would be best for you to speak to the other healthcare workers, to the authorities in your organization, if there is not one that is big enough in your organization to hook up with a partner organization that's big and that has more resources. Rather than you are the healthcare worker, people are looking to you to tell them about this vaccine. And so you are the one to tell your pastor about this vaccine. It is tantamount to malpractice for you to go to church and allow the pastor to speak about the vaccine when you are in the congregation and you need to learn about this vaccine to speak to it. I am not a chemist or scientist, so if I need to hear, I'll go to Dr. Najala to say, tell me about the chemistry of it. You see, she said something that I want to highlight. She talked about the dye, in luciferase dye that is used for animals. Just like when you get a CAT scan, you get the iron dye just so they can see where it's going. But I'll tell you that people have used that word to mean something totally different. That is not scientific. To mean something so nefarious that it needs to stop. The luciferase dye has nothing to do with Lucifer, please. So let's really, as the scientists in the panel, let's not do a disservice to our people who are acutely affected by COVID. They're really just people, but we're also people of knowledge. Let us, as healthcare workers, partner with each other. There is a physician that you know, there is a scientist that you might know. You know, I'm a nurse practitioner. I don't claim to be a PhD chemist. I would give you the vaccine, but even I need to learn about what the vaccine is, what is in the vaccine, so I can explain it to the person who's receiving it that I'm giving the vaccine to. I need to learn about it, I need to trust it, so I can give it. And once I trust it, I need to take it. And when I take it, I'm able to speak to it. I can't give it if I don't know anything about it. So it's my job. For all of us healthcare workers, it's our job to learn about this. The life of your co-workers, for the life of the people you're taking care of. The worst thing that can happen in a hospital setting is called a sentinel event. That is when a healthcare worker brings a disease into the hospital facility and it kills the patient. That is criminal. It's a sentinel event. So, that's my law background, sorry. But it's a sentinel event. And so with all of that in mind, let's think about what we're doing. And if nursing is not for you anymore, then it's not for you anymore. And that's okay. And that's okay. But the worst thing that can happen is to take something into the facility that you work. And you might be healthy, but it kills the patient that's vulnerable, or it kills a co-worker that's vulnerable. That is unacceptable. So that's what I'll end with. Well, in the front line, but if the front line is no longer for you, then get out of it. For the better good, for the greater good of everyone and for yourself.
Wow, that is amazing. You know, and just to add to that, and sometimes it's not because the nurse doesn't want to do it, it's because they're burned out. And that is where self-care really comes into play. And that is why leadership at this current time cannot be punitive. They have to find out what is going on, have a plan in place to help those caregivers. Because yes, it is a matter of fact, I think researchers actually said, you know, healthcare workers are going through the worst amount of stress, worse than somebody at the war front. So just imagine, of a sudden, you're seeing all these dead bodies on a daily basis. You're shocking them, you're tubing them, you're tracheing them. It is heavy. And you're going home having to worry about you and your family. So sometimes it's not going to be because they no longer want to do it. It's because mentally, they don't have the full capacity to function. adequately and professionally. So I think we also need to be mindful of that. Lots of love on Facebook and some questions and comments on here. Colette says, she works with a pediatrician and understands that some vaccine reactions are very normal. I'm going for mine tomorrow. No joke. Good job, Colette. And then Gwen says, very inspiring, much needed information. And she has a question. What can you say about all the negative videos and comments about the dangers of the COVID-19 vaccine? I'll let any one of you guys take that. Or you can go around and just say what your thoughts are.
I think I'll say something about that. It's the matter of information. You understand? I think that the algorithm on social media brings you stuff that you have watched again. So I would just advise that please try to pick your sources of information properly, because the more of those conspiracy videos you watch, the more that will come in your feed. And as I said before, some people are fearful and they are spreading fear, but some people are intentionally, wittingly putting out information which they know to be false and detrimental, but they are putting it out there anyway. So I would just say, how can you say? You need to be able to question your source of information, and then also to look back at the people you trust. Like I see this panel is very cautious. They are not getting into the lane of fields they don't understand. They stay clear. But there are a lot of people out there who the less they know, the more they talk about. And it's very disheartening. It is very disheartening when somebody who doesn't know something seems to be the expert in that thing. And then when lies or things that seem, because I've seen even the QR code Mr. showed. As soon as people saw that QR code, they said, "We told you, this is the number." You understand? It's not so. They are generating conspiracy theories from things that shouldn't work. I think that we should be careful where we get information, and then we should also be careful what we watch online, because the machine learning online learns what you watch and gives you that.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't say that better, Doctor. You actually touched on it. I think what I would add is really about defining and teaching your sources so that you get the right sources, because what you project out there is what you're going to be getting. So please read up. Let's read peer-reviewed documents and ask those who actually understand it before we go out and we spread information. I've had a few people who have forwarded things to me, and I've gone back to in the background and just told them, this is not accurate, please don't share. And they say, oh, we're just forwarding. I said, well, we have the responsibility not to forward, because the more you forward, the more your feed is going to be fed with all of that nonsense. So please, let's take that responsibility. Even if we don't understand the information, anything you don't understand, please do not forward, and just delete from your feed.
And this is Tabe. Before I go, just a shout out to everybody who's working at the front line. It is not easy. Self-care, as Dr. G said, is important. When you feel like you're burning out, step back, speak to somebody. There are mental health professionals that would help just unpack all of what's going on. So when you show up back to work, you're showing up with your whole self.
Yeah.
Because you can't give what you don't have. It has been a long time for those working at the front line, and the trauma is real. And so because the trauma is real, we're trying to prevent the re-traumatization. of it all, and some of the negative things that come on video just add to the trauma. And so to be kind to each other, and as Dr. Najala said, before you forward something, think about it. Would it add to somebody's trauma? This misinformation, would it add to the trauma? Because at the end of this, it'll be like PTSD. So let's just be kind to each other. And some things you just delete, and for the people you love, don't forward it to them. Because what good would it do? Are you trying to convince them not to take a vaccine? Are you trying to convince them that that COVID-19 is not real? But most of all, if you're a healthcare worker, you are the authority. So when you forward something that you have not looked at, or that you've not gone back to the original source to look at where it's coming from and look at the credentials of the person who did it, then you have to say, if I send it, then I'm sending it as an authority. Then the lay members of my family, some of us have family group chats. What would the auntie say? The kid started a nurse practitioner, so it must be true. But yet you just forwarded it. So, and that is the trauma that compounds. So again, in for the greater good, and to minimize the trauma that we send to each other, let's not forward things that go against our beliefs, our scientific beliefs, and take the time to vet it and ask questions yourself before you send anything else out.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. I mean, Tabe, you just crowned it all, because we truly cannot give from an empty cup of love. So we got to fill our cup of love so we can continue to give that access to those who have been positioned under our care. So with that said, I thank you so much for coming on, and I know you have to run, but we appreciate you. Just keep up doing the good work. We're watching you, and this is not the end. You're always welcome to The Truth with Dr. G to share more information. And I think that we as leaders in this community should really continue, go into the churches, the schools, and break this down so the layperson can understand. There are people waiting for information, but not enough people to carry out the education itself. So I hope that we individually can think about that and really team up and continue to bring this information. So we thank you for hanging out, and have a great rest of your weekend. So Dr. Najala, you as a lifestyle coach, would you advise those who have tested positive, those who are on quarantine at home, should they just, because they have such achy muscles and headaches and coughing and you name it, should they just lay there? Or are there things that, some practical tips and strategies that they should be implementing to hopefully get better soon without having to go to the hospital? And if they need to go to the hospital, when is that time to go to the hospital?
So I am going to speak here with many different caps. Yeah. So I again, initially when I introduced myself, I focused more on the chemistry and my scientific past. But I'm also a coach, as Dr. G has just mentioned. So I train a lot of women, and hopefully, as I'm improving my entourage, my number of people who are coming with me, I will get the men involved as well. Maybe Doc, you can join us. But we are fully engrossed with getting into this wellness space. And I spend most of my mornings now, making sure I master anatomy and physiology and everything wellness in the world. So yes, another cap that I hold right now is that during the Christmas break, I also got infected with COVID-19. So I can actually speak to that very confidently right now. And even though I was fairly asymptomatic, I still got most of the symptoms, the general symptoms that most people talk about, which is the coughing, the headaches, and the slight fever. My son also got the slight fever, so it is something that would handicap you a little bit. I personally, I work out religiously 6 to 7 days a week. I do high intensity interval trainings. I train a lot of women in the field of wellness, and I'm actually a fitness coach. So I know what it did to me as a 50-year-old female African female. I know that it hurt my intensity. I'm usually jumping rope 1,000 jumps at a time nonstop, and I could barely do 200 when I was probably on my 4th or 5th day of my infection. So I had to slow down. But I could absolutely, it would have killed me if I stopped. So first of all, you know what COVID affects. COVID, the first thing it affects is your lungs. It affects your breathing, it affects your lung function. So whatever you can do to the level of your lung capacity to keep that going, you've got to continue doing that. Laying down in bed is not recommended. I would speak to that personally. It is not recommended. Yes, get your rest, get as much good nutrition as you can get, get all of the vitamins that you typically would get, all of the recommendations that your physician would give you. Make sure you follow that. Hydrate yourself properly, but please go out with your mask on and get that walk in. Go out, make sure you can do something that would help with your breathing, help with your lung function, to actually get you a little bit exhausted. You don't want to push it because it's going to break you down. COVID is powerful. So do as much as you can and try increasing your vitality with every passing day. And it actually helps with your recovery. But please don't overdo it and listen to your physicians. But I would absolutely recommend those breathing exercises. Make sure you're doing your breathing exercises. Make sure you're going out for walks. Make sure you're hydrating properly. Make sure you're taking your good nutrition. Make sure you're taking your vitamins, and you will get out of it. Now, if you get sick, I would speak personally, because in my case, as Tabe said, and as Doc has said, you have to be careful of the people that get infected who are older or who have comorbidities. In my case, my dad got very sick and is still in the hospital. So this is not a joke. Please, once you start having that shortness of breath, call your physician and head to the hospital based on what they tell you to do, and follow your physician's opinions. Please don't try to stay home and think that we're going to use ginger and garlic and all of these different concoctions and help and the steam treatment. Please do not do that. I personally, I feel very fit, I feel very strong, but I still went to the emergency room. I'm not recommending that people do that, but I am saying if you feel really bad, please call your physician and they'll tell you exactly what to do. So don't try to self-treat yourself. We have had a lot of fatalities that have occurred because of that. We think we have the fever grass and we have everything that we can do to treat ourselves at home. Please do not do that. Make sure you get an authority to guide you towards getting well.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Nukuna, for that elaborate and really thoughtful response to that. And lived experience, as I always say, is phenomenal, because you have been through it. I went through it. And, the classical symptoms, you don't get everything that they say you're going to get. I, for one, I did not get the loss of smell and taste. I did not have a fever, but I had the myalgia like crazy. It was so painful. And one night, I thought I could just keep going, because I just go. And, I, of a sudden, had this shortness of breath coming up the staircase. And I realized, I did a little too much. And, fortunately, I had my inhaler that had already been prescribed and my prednisone, and those took care of me. Some people do not have that readily available to them. So it is very important that you know what to look for and when to really seek medical advice. Because yes, the turmeric and the ginger and the lemongrass and all of that, maybe those things that we have used in the past from our cultural backgrounds, but this thing is really not very clear as to what will treat it. Yeah. So you just don't want to rely on the hearsay, and what has worked for one person is not necessarily going to work for the other. So you just really have to listen to your body. And also, like Dr. Nukuna said, it depends on how active you have been. And you just have to keep those lungs open, exercise them in being a prone position. What you have to do to really drain and open up your alveoli. So it is, what it is. We can get through this, but just be mindful that you have it, somebody else, you might, potentially infect someone else. So just keep the social distancing. I cannot say it enough. Wear your mask, separate from others. Yes, we have community living, like Dr. Amar Kobe said, but this is when we have to really start thinking, is our community living beneficial to our community? Or do we want the community to vanish? We have to think about that. So Gwen from Gwendy Spotlight and Gwendy Media TV is extending an invitation to the panel to come on her show, Gwendy Media TV, or her Spotlight, to really continue this conversation. So if you need Gwen's contact, Dr. Nukuna, I believe you have it. Dr. Amar Kobe, if this is okay with you, I can extend your contacts to Gwen, and we can have this conversation on the Gwendy show. And let me see, I think Florence says, thank you, Dr. Nat, for that information. We really need to get it through our communities. Absolutely so. And I'm going to allow we actually cannot believe it's after 4 p.m. We can talk about this, till day dark. And I would invite all of you to come back when you think we need to have a part 2 of this conversation. We can continue to sensitize our community. If we have to do Zoom calls for churches and schools, I am in for it. As long as you're in, we can continue this education because we need it. It's very important and crucial to the livelihood of our citizens in in our communities. So I'm going to allow each and every one of you to say your closing thoughts, and we will close out.
Okay. All right. I think that we have both a medical and an information pandemic. And we know for sure that people only make rational and logical decisions in safe, secure, and trusted environment. Other than that, they'll go by their gut. So it's the responsibility of leaders and community influencers to create a safe and secure and trusted environment where people can be able to get the right information. And it's also the responsibility of the community members to seek out the right information and slow down the flow of conspiracy. Please do your part by not forwarding conspiracy theories because they are traveling 6 times faster than the truth.
That's absolutely true.
Yes, that's all I can say. Do your part. Slow down the flow of conspiracy theories by not forwarding messages that are, if you don't understand it, please call somebody on the side and talk about it and then delete it. Otherwise, just forwarding messages that are wrong, you're going to kill somebody. They're going to believe you. They're going to trust you. So that is all I can say of the responsibility of both the community influencers and community members. Be responsible, and we are in this together, and we shall all survive and thrive.
Absolutely. Thank you. Dr. Nukuna.
So that's great. I would like to end as a scientist, and I would really want to emphasize a few points about these 2 vaccines that have been absolutely given the authority for emergency care. I call it liquid gold. I call it liquid gold, and I want it in my arm really badly, right? I am not a frontliner to say. I work in the scientific field, and we have been able to help provide PPEs to different organizations. So I am not considered one of the people who are at most at risk, but I am dying to get this vaccine. I really don't care which one I get, whether it's the Pfizer one or the Moderna vaccine. We know both of them are as efficacious, if not equally efficacious. They have been studied and vetted and peer-reviewed, and clinical studies in the thousands. So they have 45,000 I think in the phase 3 trial for Pfizer, and about 30,000 in the phase 3 trial for Moderna. And within the group of people, some received placebo and some received the real vaccine. But it was absolutely, we're talking in Unity Solutions here about diversity. It was well represented. We had the people from the brown and black community in the 30,000 population in the Moderna vaccine. About 11,000 came from the black and brown and indigenous communities. We also had people who were above 65, those who were at higher risk. We had people who were below 65 who had comorbidities. We had the full range of people involved in the clinical trials. And when it came out, they showed clearly that these vaccines, for Moderna, it was about 94.1 efficacious. Now, keep in mind that what they were looking at were the symptoms of COVID for the patients, for those who were offered the vaccine or the placebo. Remember that they were not looking at transmission of the COVID-19. So basically, at the end of the study, they were not looking at sterilization of the COVID-19 vaccine, whether you could be asymptomatic and still transmit it, okay? So the vaccine does not stop transmission. The vaccine stops infection and it prevents sickness from COVID-19. So it is absolutely imperative for us to protect ourselves from getting infected. But the jury is still out on whether it will prevent you, even after you get vaccinated, that you won't be able to transmit it. So let's be cautious about that. A lot of the transmission is occurring from asymptomatic, so people who don't show symptoms. You're going around and you're carrying it and you don't know, and you transmit it to your elderly loved ones. So the vaccine is not going to stop that. So we still need to mask up, we still need to wash out, we still need to separate, stay away from all those njangi and beer houses. Let's still get to the point where about 75 to 80% of the population has been vaccinated. And then we can say herd immunity has been instilled in our population, right? Let's be patient. Trust me, I want to go dance. I'm waiting for September, October to be able to go out there and dance. For now, let's just be patient and let this thing run its course. So I really beg of you, and if you're vaccinating, please make sure you take the first one and the booster shot as well, because the scientific knowledge shows that it's after about 7 or up to 14 days of either the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine, after you have taken that booster shot, that you're confident that you will not be infected, or you most likely will not be infected from COVID-19. So please, please, please take the second shot as well. So let's do what we can. Let's do our part. Doc has told us about not sharing the bad information out there. If you see it, delete it. It is not true. There is no evil Lucifer in the COVID-19 vaccine. It is safe. It is safe. Let's go out and take it. There may be side effects, yes, but those side effects are not going to be very different from what you get from the flu vaccine side effects. And yes, if you do get allergenic, some people are getting really harsh allergies. Very few, by the way, very few. Out of the millions, maybe they're looking at maybe 5 to 10 people out of the millions that have been vaccinated globally. So please don't share that as the main story. No, it isn't. The benefits far outweigh the risks of this. And yeah. I will end with my personal story. Please, please, Lord, I know for a fact what it takes for your loved elderly ones to be sick of this COVID-19. Don't get into our shoes. It's not fun. It's guilt laden. So please, just do your part and let's save our elderly and those with comorbidities. Thank you.
Wow. What a touching experience and closure. And I thank you, Dr. Amar Kobe, Dr. Nukuna, for your time and willingness to share your experience and expertise. It has been very enlightening. You can see the love on Facebook and from all the comments. I hope that we reached and touched someone. I hope we inspired someone. I hope we encouraged someone. And I hope that greater numbers have made up their minds to go out and take this vaccine. And yes, it doesn't mean you might not get in, contract the virus, but you'll be less sick than you would have been if you did not have the vaccine. Keith, stop that. So sorry about that, guys. My son just came in here, turned the TV on.
Yeah.
So what else can I say? The experts have said it all. So we just truly have to be mindful of what we're doing. And also, beside just worrying about the vaccine, let's worry about those comorbidity factors. Let's educate our communities about living a healthy lifestyle, what it means to be healthy. Tomorrow, we're celebrating Martin Luther King. We're celebrating hope. We're celebrating peace. So let us go in this together with the mindset of having hope for our communities, building healthy communities, communities that are together so that we can live like the South African verbiage says, what? Ubuntu, right? We're each other's keeper. So if we're going to be each other's keeper, let us be each other's keeper in all spheres of life. Healthcare, how we live, what we eat, how we live life. And with that, living as a community, we can be our sister's keeper. We can be our brother's keeper. So with that said, let us just continue to do our part. We cannot do this single-handedly. It's going to take a community effort. And yes, it does take a village to raise a child. So we can hold our village and fight this pandemic. With that said, I thank you all again for coming on to share your expertise and experiences. And I thank our audience for your continued support. Please go out there and be safe and well. And on that note, I'd like to end this by saying thank you again and have a great week ahead of you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.